Welcome back and welcome to our first ever video podcast. It's the Hoops Temple Network. I'm Nate Schwartz. Joining me from Sacramento, Aaron Schroeder.
Good to see you, man. It's been a bit.
I know it has been. It's been even longer since we've gotten to do what we're about to do, which is expand our all time top 100 players list.
I've been excited. I've spent too much time in my last semester at Sac State not studying, but instead try to make this list.
That's studying,
That's
it
studying
counts
in
for
a
something,
way.
right? Yeah. I've been really digging into the history of the ABA. I know I bring that up a lot, but this book, all red, all of these like wonderful little note marks made it in there. I'm a sucker for some good sticky notes. So expect some ABA talk. Like I sent you.
I'm excited for it. There's some good ABA players
Yeah.
coming up.
And as I found out last night, the first woman to play in NBA or ABA history got in for a possession. Good old Penny Ann Early for the Kentucky Colonels.
She comes in number 189. Stay tuned.
She will not make this list. No.
I'll vouch for her. When we get out to top 4,000, I'll vouch for her.
She didn't mess up her inbounds pass, so that counts for something, right?
It does. It counts for something.
A little bit sexist. They did make her play in a sweater and a mini skirt, or like a skirt of sorts, which might have just been what female basketball uniforms were at the time, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
I think it was skirts in the early women's basketball.
Fair enough. All right. So we concluded our top 100. Then a season of basketball happened. We released it into the world. We've gotten some feedback. Not that those two things are the same. But so another season happened. We feel Booker and Luka should be in the top 100 somewhere. And you have a mysterious third person that you think also should be in.
I do. I think we made a slight mistake. Nate, I need you to answer a question for me. Who led the league in playoff points per game in 1958? Very important question. Think about it, because you probably can find the answer.
In 1958?
1958. Who won the title that year?
Gosh. Was it the Pistons?
I think you're a little too early.
58. It's not Bob Pettit. We have Bob Pettit clearly on here. Is it Dolph Shays is too early. Gary Gow. I don't know. Tell me who I'm missing.
It's Cliff Hagan. It's Bob Pettit's teammate.
Really?
I think we totally overlooked that. Not only that, he leads the league in field goal percentage as well. He shoots 50% from the field. He averages 27.7 points per game, 10 boards, 3.4 assists. Now, Pettit has the better finals and the 50-point closeout game, but I think we wildly overlooked Hagan's contributions to a championship team. I think we missed that, and I looking back on it, I ended up putting Hagan at 94, in between Tony Parker and Chauncey Billups. How do you feel about that placement?
I can get there with Hagan. I mean, maybe not 94, and we can discuss redoing the top 100 at a later time. Mm-hmm. But I really just wanted to bump out the three guys that we could start on our, top 200.
Okay.
I like it. All right, so then I guess that means the players that are getting chopped from the top 100 then are going to be Bob Lanier, James Worthy, and Connie Hawkins.
The three unfortunate souls who could not hold on.
Yes, they are, do you have any desire to reorder them, or you want to just slide them back as is?
I think we can slide them back as is. I feel good about that.
Okay. And, hey, if you didn't get a chance to listen to all 10 hours of our previous top 100, or us player ranking by position for, I don't know how many hours that's been, quick rundown. Bob Lanier, great big man for the Pistons, 20 and 10 for like a decade. James Worthy, solid small forward for the Lakers, winning of, was he on 3 or 4 of the championship teams? Just 4, I believe. 3, top of my head. But big game James, finals MVP. And then Connie Hawkins, one of the ultimate what ifs. He was unfortunately banned from the league for a gambling incident that he wasn't really even that involved in. And then showed up to the ABA, won MVP, won a title. Like he had the skills. We didn't get to see enough of it. That's why he's out.
I feel good about what we've created so far, which leaves us at 104. Now, the way we've done this is we have the 5 positions with nominations from each position given the player rankings as they start. So, 1 second while I think about how to rephrase that. We have all 5 positions ranked down to the top 50, and we take the top ranked player as a nomination for that position to the top 100 to the top 200. Nate, would you like me to read you the 5 nominations we have going into this podcast?
Yeah.
From the point guard position, we have legendary 60s and 70s Pistons point guard Dave Bing. From the shooting guard position, we have Celtics legend Bill Sharman of 50s and 60s fame. At small forward, we have ABA pacer Roger Brown, 3-time champ. Power forward, Jerry Lucas, one of the best rebounders ever for the Cincinnati Royals and the Knicks in the 60s and 70s. And from the center position, big Ben Wallace of Pistons fame. Do you have a place you'd like to start?
So I know you've kind of done your own rankings, gone off the rails a little bit. I think Ben Wallace is the best place to start here. Yeah, the
That's it.
defensive catalyst, the '04 championship, a true undersized but great heart type of player. I I don't think there's a lot to be said about him. Maybe it's the negative wise. You got like the short peak. You've got an incredibly limited offensive game. What are your thoughts?
It is a little too early for me for Ben Wallace.
Okay.
Although he's not. I see that the defensive peak, and we got to value the defensive players. He is so bad on offense. You want to
Yeah.
read his offensive stats: points per game, field goal percentage, free throw percentage?
Are they? Does he ever get to 15 points per game?
I
That's
don't.
no, he doesn't. Does
He does not come close. I can read that for you. Ben Wallace, over the course of his career, averages 5.7 points per game. Never breaks 10 points per game. 1.3 assists, 47% from the field, and 41% from the free throw line. Now, I've defended Ben Wallace in the past, saying in this era, didn't really matter. You could just throw the ball off the backboard, get back, and play really good defense, and you'd still be really effective, which is why we're having this conversation where he's close to the top 100. I do think it is a little too early. I had him closer to 110.
okay. Okay. Who is your nomination then, or who do you think should be up next?
I had Jerry Lucas.
Okay.
I had
See,
Jerry Lucas. Go ahead.
the more I look at Jerry Lucas, the more I struggle with him. Tell me why you got him so high.
It really is the statistical output. He's a 7-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA, and that's important. But from his rookie season to 1971, he's averaging 19 points and 18 rebounds a game with 3 assists as well. He's also one of the most efficient scorers in the league. His rookie season, he leads the league in field goal percentage. He's shooting about 50% from the field for his career. He is the second best rebounding forward ever, just behind Rodman, really, but he's also putting it out on the offensive end. He's able to be really the best player on the third best team in the league, kind of consistently. They're behind the Celtics, they're behind the Lakers, the Sixers a few times, but he's still there, able to help Oscar. He's Oscar's best teammate. It's the stats with they were successful in
But
terms of go ahead.
isn't the problem though the fact that him and Oscar never did anything or never got like like
That
they're
team
the
never had
third
a
or
center.
fourth best team
Yeah,
in an
I
18
think
league.
I agree with that, but in the sense because it's an 18 league, because the talent is so condensed. If you just look at the 1965 season, the Royals win 48 games. That's the third most. The Celtics win 62 games. That's the Celtics. They go 62 and 18. It's one of the best teams of all time. Oscar and Lucas are just as good as West and Baylor. who win 49 games in a weaker Western Division. By SRS, they're the third best team that year behind the Hawks, behind the Celtics and the Hawks. It's a condensed league, but they're right there. There's the Celtics and there's a bunch of other people. I think Oscar and Lucas are just as good as anyone else, really.
Who did you have right behind Lucas? Because I'm wondering if we maybe have, two different views on the 104, but maybe the same view on 105, and we can compromise here.
I had Dave Bing.
Okay, never mind.
I figured that wasn't going to be it either. But it goes back to what we were saying earlier, where what I was just saying. 1 second. Bing and the Pistons struggle to make the playoffs, struggle to find playoff success. But I think we might have looked at that in the wrong way. 1 second. Excuse me. For example, 1968, statistically Bing's best one of Bing's best seasons. The Sixers win 62 games. That's Wilt and all of those guys. Bing isn't better than those guys. For the Celtics, it's Russell. He's not better than them. The Knicks win 43 games, and that's Walt Frazier and Willis Reed and all of those guys. The Lakers have West and Elgin. We've acknowledged that those guys are better than Bing, and I think at some point, I think it's time for Dave Bing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Where we've already given all the guys better than them their flowers. At some point, winning 40-ish games against talent that we've ranked in the top 10, in the top 20, in the top 30, in the top 100, it is worth something.
It's worth something, but is it worth this? What about Roger Brown?
I'm flexible. I'm willing to go to Roger Brown.
That's where I was really hoping that we were gonna kind of get to with that 104 comment. Roger Brown, just an elite small forward. He was also wrapped up in that same scandal that kept him from coming to the NBA. He was able to jump into the ABA, and we had the debate when we did top 100. Was it him or was it Connie Hawkins? And I think we settled on Connie because he had a higher upside, whereas Brown was slightly worse, but won multiple championships, was a part of something great. And I think that matters. I'm looking
True.
for a bit of a legacy play here to kick off our top 200.
It comes down to the ABA for me and how I view Brown's
Sure.
fall off pretty sharply. I'll give you some more Dave Bing stuff. Just before we leave, in 1968, he was second in points per game. In 1971, he was fourth. He's also eighth in 1969. He was... 1 second. I can just stop talking and you can edit this. It's great. He has 8 seasons in the top 10 for assists per game. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons in the top 5. Within that, 1 season, 1975, where he's second. So you have one of the best scorers and one of the best passers in the league during a time where the league is pretty condensed. He's going up against guys like Oscar and West and the greats, really. You love it. It's hard.
All right. You talked me into Dave Bing.
Wow. I'm surprised I got you there.
Bing is also a gentleman. Bing has a really great reputation as a statesman for the game, as being a positive force on his teammates and on the league. And there are a lot of old heads in Detroit, and as I get older, I got to be careful with calling people old heads. But Bing is incredibly well respected, and I like the idea of honoring what he did.
He's a great scorer. He's a great passer. He's a great person. Are we going to take him at 104 then?
Sure.
And Jerry Lucas gets kicked down. Okay.
Yeah. Can I get Roger Brown in over Jerry Lucas?
Possibly. Would you like to hear the new point guard nomination in case it changes your mind?
It's Dennis Johnson. It
is Dennis Johnson. Okay. We'll get to Dennis Johnson later. I'm willing to do Roger Brown. Can you give us the in-depth Roger Brown analysis, the stats, the
It'd be great if I had it prepared. Roger Brown comes into the ABA in 68. He is a four-time All-Star or, or in those seasons and wins three championship rings. Now, in his championship runs, 1970, he is averaging 28 points, 10 rebounds, and basically 6 assists. He was kind of a could do it all type of player. And he's a guy that, yeah, the coach had to get on him a bit, but he gave it all it's worth. And those Pacers are really they're the Celtics of the ABA. And he is, you know, probably best looked at as like the John Havlicek of that franchise. Maybe not because Havlicek came a little bit later. Maybe he's the Sam Jones of it. He's the number two. He is an elite offensive wing who can also dig into guys defensively. He was one of the most athletic players of the early ABA, and that's saying something because the ABA was it's just much more athletic league. They didn't have the size, but they had a lot of speed and leaping ability.
he has a playoff MVP, the 1970 playoff MVP, something that the ABA did instead of the was it instead of the Finals MVP? You can edit that part out.
I don't know if
Yeah,
they did it instead of it or just to be something different. But I
but
like it.
I think I'm into it. So I could sell you on Jerry Lucas for 106. Then is that correct?
Sure. We gotta
All
get
right.
Lucas off the board. To be fair, he is one of the guys that has fallen so much on and this rankings from his matrix. Do you want to know where he ended in the matrix?
I'm guessing his rebounds and his win shares put him probably close to 60.
51. And this is why I say the matrix is a good guidepost. Like, you can definitely break it. But Jerry Lucas's insane rebounding numbers, and they truly are just insane. He is, up there with guys like Will Chamberlain and Bill Russell as far as just a sheer rebounding volume. You just don't see the impact, and it is a little bit inflated because of that super fast era and poor shooting.
But he was really good at shooting. Kevin McHale said he could shoot threes, and I believe Kevin McHale.
To be fair, Kevin McHale's talking about a non-Celtic here,
That's
so
true. McHale never talks about non-Celtics, so he really must have been into it.
yeah, yeah. Listen, he'll lie to you all day about Celtics. If he was like, sure, I once saw Larry Bird beat Muhammad Ali in an arm wrestling contest. I'm like, okay, Kevin, okay. But if he's saying something nice about a non-Celtic, I'm a little bit more inclined to believe it.
Would you like to hear our new nominations as we got rid of a point guard, a small forward, and a power forward?
Yes, sir.
From the point guard position, we have Supersonic, Phoenix Sun, and Celtic Dennis Johnson. We have from the small forward position, controversial Utah Jazz. He was a Piston as well. I think some other teams. Shit, I just stumbled over my head. 1 second. From the small forward position, we have kind of a controversial one. It's Adrian Dantley, someone who is very talented. The numbers are crazy. Maybe the intangibles fall just a little bit short. And from the power forward position, it's Tommy Heinsohn, Celtics legend with the Bill Russell dynasty.
You're sure I can't interest you in a Ben Wallace yet? I really feel like Ben Wallace has got to be here.
I'm close to it. I would like to do one more. And I think the accolades tell us, the stats tell us this person probably should have been off the board. Can I
Who's your
can I
person?
entice you in Bill Sharman?
Sharman's interesting. You picked on uh, whoever their center was pre-Russell. Well, I'm drawing a blank in names right now.
Is
But
it Ed
Sharman,
Ackley?
yeah, Sharman also has to bear some of that. Hey, we couldn't do much. Kuzi was an MVP-esque player. Sharman is the Klay Thompson of this Celtics era, but pre-Russell, I don't know that he's providing a lot other than just being an insane free throw shooter.
He's an insane free throw shooter, but he's also really the first guard ever to consistently shoot over 40%. So you have that angle plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 free throw shooting titles, which is really impressive. A good scorer, 4 rebounds a game, 3 assists per game. He's an 8-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA, 4-time champ. Just that alone tells me probably he has a top 100 argument. I feel like we should get someone like that off the board.
I just wish he kind of contributed more. There's not a ring where he's better than the third guy, and at least with Ben Wallace, we have one of the best defensive players of his era and 1B on championship team.
Can I offer you that he was 6th in points per game in 1957, 5th in 58, 8th in 59, while being 7th in assists per game in 1957? So in 1957 ring, he's top 10 in points and assists per game for a championship Celtics team. That sounds like contributing to me.
It's contributing, but like that was the thing, is that Bill let you be great at doing your thing. You were able to be that offensive specialist and shoot with the shots and not have to contribute in other ways. He held down the defense for the top defensive team. I mean, the Celtics weren't like a great offensive team. It's kind of like when we say Rondo has a bunch of assist titles. Well, yeah, but it was a poor offensive team. Sharman was a great shooter on a poor offensive team, and it was a lot of what did Bill
Okay.
do?
Okay. I'm willing to do Ben Wallace. I'm willing to do Ben Wallace.
Hell yeah. And then Sharman at
And
108.
that sounds good.
Got him in there. You're welcome, Ben. I went to your jersey retirement ceremony. Not like intentionally, but I just had tickets and it ended up being that game. So that was a really cool moment. Got to
That's awesome.
watch them raise his jersey to the rafters. All right. Well, that introduces a new center to the list, and that center is Dikembe Mutombo. Also a new shooting guard. New shooting guard on the list is Paul Westphal. So our current options are Dennis Johnson, Paul Westphal, Adrian Dantley, Tommy Heinsohn, and Dikembe Mutombo. Any name jumping out to you?
I'm really into Dennis Johnson.
Okay.
I think it's time. Something interesting about Johnson is early in his career, he starts off in Seattle. It's 4 seasons in Seattle. He does make 2 All-Star teams, as well as winning a championship and a Finals MVP. But he's known as, what his Wikipedia page says, is a slam dunking shooting guard at 6'4" as at the shooting guard position. And then later in his career, he moves into this playmaking role for really good Celtics teams. And just seeing that transition is really awesome for me. But he wins 1979 Finals MVP, and it's a weird era. It's the post Russell. I mean, it's the entire 70s. It's pre Magic, pre Bird, post Russell. The league has no idea what it's doing. It has a huge drug problem, and the talent isn't very good. But Dennis Johnson is really good. In the 1979 Finals, he averages 22.6 points per game with 6 boards and 6 assists. They whoop on the Bullets in 5 games, and he takes home the Finals MVP. And at this point, for 109, I feel pretty good about that. And just on top of all that, he plays in 35 playoff series, averaging 17 points, 4 boards, 6 assists. He's a really good playoff player, also one of the best defensive guards ever, 9-time all defense.
I was hoping you were going to bring that up. Actually, I was hoping you wouldn't, so that way I could bring that up. But the 9 times all defensive also includes 3 straight times where he led the league in all defensive team votes prior to the DPOY being invented. Now, you could say that's because like it's a lot harder to pick between bigs, and it is true. Choosing which center you want to have on your defensive team, a lot harder competition as opposed to which point guard, shooting guard you want to have. But I think that there's at least an outside chance. There's a case that he could have won a Defensive Player of the Year between 79 and 81, which I think is something really interesting to kind of look at and think about. That, what would we have considered his career to be had he won that?
People love the Defensive Player of the Year award.
Mm-hmm.
in general basketball discourse, I think would really help him. They would think about him as a top 75 snub. Are we comfortable here with Dennis Johnson at 108, 109,
Yeah. Yeah, I love
109?
DJ. Listen, the guy
DJ.
went from being, uh, I mean, not even he went from being a role player. He went from being like a sixth man to a Finals MVP the next year. Steadies out as an All-Star, and then has a great back half of his career. And we talk a lot of guys longevity, and usually it's they tail off or whatnot. The longevity on this guy's career is contributing at a high level to Celtics championship teams who did not have a great guard presence. I mean, those Celtics had an amazing front line, but he's kind of carrying them from the guard perspective.
It's him and Danny Ainge and Sitchting. Is that the other guy's name? It's probably
What would
a big Celtic we're forgetting. Let me open some pages up 1 second.
I mean? There's Tiny Archibald there.
Jerry Sitchting. Yeah, Tiny Archibald, Danny Ainge.
I mean,
Um,
in the 80s, I think Tiny left before
yeah,
Dennis Johnson got there naturally. But yeah, I think
from
that's
1984 to 1987 with the Celtics, he's averaging 17 points and almost 7 assists per game while being really good on defense. I'm into it.
perfect. That brings Penny Hardaway to the list. I like Penny. I don't want him at 110. But how do you feel about Adrian Dantley?
Sorry, when I'm not responding, I'm organizing tabs and updating the list. I figured you understood.
Sure. Yeah.
That's who I had next. 110, I had Adrian Dantley.
Perfect. Dantley got a lot more love than I expected. And for when I released the list online on TikTok, there was a swarm of people saying, "I can't believe you don't have Dantley in there." Dantley averaged 30 with God, what was his true shooting? He has like a 4 season stretch averaging just insane numbers. And I think my problem was that one, he misses most of one of those years. So let's not just throw that out the window that he only plays 22 games in 83. But two, they were bad all of those years. And Utah only starts to get good after they get rid of him. Now they had drafted Carl Malone and decided that we're going to build the team around Malone, but it's weird to have a player that averages 30 points per game on what is this true shooting? On 64% true shooting and be one of the worst offensive teams in the league. And part of it's because Dantley is a back you down, post up small forward and small forward, not
To
just.
back you down from 35 feet all the way down because there wasn't the 10-second back to the basket rule yet. Him and
Mhm.
Barkley really made that a necessary rule because he was just stronger. He was 6'5", 208, and just had really strong legs and he was too fast for big guys and way too strong for small guys. He's still very effective, averaging 30 a night from 1980 to 1986. I texted you about this, but I think the issue with Danley is if Danley's your best player, you probably can win 48 games, 46, 47 games. As you start to build talent around him to get to the 56 wins, 60 wins, he doesn't buy into that. He starts going, "Hey, whoa, where's my shots, man? Like, I thought I was the guy." And so when he goes to Detroit, while they went to the finals, while they almost won that finals, he's not happy with his just 20 points per game because he thought he was better than that. While he's still a great player, Carmelo had this issue. Iverson has this issue, kind of. Russell Westbrook has this issue where when the team gets better around him and their numbers falter, they don't doesn't sit well with them, and that really matters in team building.
The only thing in there that I would push back is I'm not sure that you can build a 40 win. Well, I guess they do who eventually get a 40
They
win
do,
team
they
in
do.
with them.
They've, yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
I feel good
Yeah.
about it. I mean, the stats tell you he's one of the 30 best players ever, but how's 110?
Yeah. No, and like truly, the Matrix, built up of writers poll, awards, and stats, and the stats have him at 43rd. That column, like he has just an insane statistical dominance, but it does not translate well to winning. There's a reason the Lakers win chip as soon as they kind of move off of him. There's a reason the Pistons win back to back
Yeah, and
when
it's
they move
called
off of
Magic
him.
Johnson, Nate.
Listen,
Don't blame him for that. Don't blame him for that.
I I'm not gonna blame him for that, but he's not helping himself. Magic Johnson is one of his boys. When the Lakers lose to the Celtics, it's Magic and Dantley and Isaiah hanging out, and like he was in LA. He had a chance to be part of this run, but he doesn't transition well. He doesn't move the ball well, and they had to get rid of him. So, you know, I he could have been James Worthy, but he's not, and so that's why he's back at 110.
I think it's a great point. He is, without a doubt, better than someone like James Worthy, but at some point, accepting your role when you're not that guy is so important. And Worthy did it better than many, many people. He was way overqualified for that position.
I'm also just going to say this right now because I might be misremembering the story. It might be Mark Aguirre, not Adrian Dantley. That's with Magic. I might just be getting it mixed up in my mind. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, throw it in the comments. Let me know. But all right, so if that knocks Dantley off the board, who's our next small forward?
Gives us Chris Mullin,
Chris.
Warrior and Pacer, and that, Nate, is my nomination. I want to go to Dantley straight to Chris Mullin. Chris
Really?
Mullin. Yeah, would you like to hear the Chris Mullin case?
Sure.
From 1989 to 1993, it's 5 straight seasons. He's a 5-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA, including a first-team All-NBA, 26 points per game, 5.6 rebounds per game, 4 assists per game, 2 steals per game on 52, 35, 87 splits. That's a 5-year stretch as good as basically anybody. He leads the league in minutes twice per game as well. And they're making the playoffs at least fairly consistently. I think they make it in
They make it
89,
in.
91, 92, 94. He does get hurt in 93, but he's really good in the playoffs as well. In 1989 against Utah, up against Karl Malone, Stockton, he puts up 32 points per game, 5 boards, 5 assists. And then in the next round, while they lose to Phoenix, he's still 27, 6, and 4. 1991 against the 2-seeded Spurs as a 7 seed, he drops 25 points, 7 boards, and 3 assists. And then they do what they can to the Lakers in round 2, but end up losing. He's not as good as Magic. He's not as good as David Robinson or the guys he plays in the playoffs, but he's still really good statistically. In 1994, they get swept by Phoenix, but he's still 25 points, 5 boards, 4 assists. The Warriors aren't great, but there is a flash. There's a flash of the pan in the 90s of Chris Mullin being really good, while the Warriors are just horrible on either sides of that for 20 years, going both ways.
I like it. I like it. Can I talk to you about Penny Hardaway?
I wanted to talk to you, Penny Hardaway. Damn it. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm just gonna jump the gun. I'm not not a fan of the Chris Mullin fade. He's got to kind of fade in. He's got too much of the high top. Like you know, we're gonna do Hardaway first, or we're gonna talk about Hardaway at least. Because Penny makes back-to-back All NBA first teams, which is a really hard thing to do. That time and space in the league was just a tough era. I mean, you've got to get in there over Gary Payton, over John Stockton, Mitch Richmond, Reggie Miller, Jason Kidd. Kidd doesn't even make a team because that's how crowded the field was. Because when Hardaway and Jordan are All NBA first team. Now, Hardaway also has a really impressive playoff series. It is a loss that they take in '97. This is kind of when Shaq's starting to look around, look at teammates, and be like, how do I get out of here? But Penny is not one of those reasons. Penny averages 31 points in that series. Is another 6 rebounds, just 4 assists, really. Not his best series, but Penny was a number 2 on a finals team. And Penny, if healthy, and what we saw from him from 95 to 97 could have been great. I think, we've got Derrick Rose a little bit further back. We're probably going to get to Rose before too long. But if you want to talk about the guys that could be top 50 players all time, could be top 30 players all time from what they showed us before they got hurt, I think it's Hardaway and it's Rose. I think we forget about Hardaway too often.
Tim Hardaway is so good. In 1996, Shaq misses the first 22 games of that season.
Mm-hmm.
And with Hardaway leading the way, they start that season 17-5. Through those 22 games, he averages 26 points a game, 7 assists, 2 steals, 5 boards on 50% shooting. That's a long enough stretch, and I know how good Hardaway is to say that he could have done it. There's a lot of second options where when Shaq gets hurt, sorry guys, we're going 500. We're 2 games under 500. Can we stay afloat? Penny Hardaway was good enough to step up to that mantle and keep the Magic as one of the best teams in the league. And even come finals time, like him and Shaq are good enough to make the finals, to beat Jordan in the playoffs. I'm all about it. Do you want to do Hardaway and then Chris Mullin?
I like it. Our next point guard that we would be jumping over is Lenny Wilkins, and I we can talk about Lenny in a moment, but I think Mullins has the case over Wilkins. So for those of you keeping track at home, I know we've now ranked quite a few players. Coming in at 101, being pushed back from our top 100 was Bob Lanier, 102, James Worthy, 103, Connie Hawkins, 104, Dave Bing, 105, Roger Brown, 106, Jerry Lucas, Ben Wallace, Bill Sharman, Dennis Johnson, Adrian Dantley, Penny Hardaway, Chris Mullins rounds us out at 112. We are halfway, just short of halfway to getting to our 125 goal for this episode.
We're on fire right now. Just flames behind us. So with that, our point guard nomination is Lenny Wilkins. And our small forward nomination is supposed to be Cliff Hagan, but we talked about this earlier. We're skipping over Hagan. You're comfortable with him making the top 100?
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. With that, it is Jim Pollard. I'd love to hear where you stand. I would love to hear your nomination.
It's Jim Pollard. I think
Jim Pollard. I agree. I had him too.
And Jim Pollard, the numbers do not impress anyone. I literally posted this list and I got some comments about people questioning how is a guy that averages 15 points per game at his peak, at his apex, better than Sean Marion? And I get it. Jim Pollard is considered by many the most skilled, the most complete all-around player of the Mikan era. You can find dozens of reports. Dozens is probably all you can find because basketball wasn't that popular back then. But you can find dozens of reports where people will call Mikan the greatest, the most dominant, and they call Jim Pollard the most skilled, the most complete, the most all-around player. He is top in the league in passing. He is a really good rebounder, and he is a good defender. The one knock you can really find on Jim Pollard is that he is much better at home than he is on the road. He gets up for the home fans, doesn't really care much about playing on the road in the regular season. So it is kind of fun to see those splits and hear people talk about it. But yeah, I think Pollard has to be the next guy up. 2-time All-NBA first team, 2-time second team, 4-time All-Star, but the All-Star game wasn't invented for one of his seasons, so probably gets another 1 or 2. I think they also didn't do injury replacements in 1 year, so he was hurt and just didn't make it, but still makes All-NBA. There's some things, but
and a 5-time champ.
Yeah.
And a 5-time champ, Nate. That's
I'm burying the lead. 5-time champion.
He's George Mikan's Scottie Pippen. And I think people tend to think of the 60s as a really fast era in the NBA, which is true. That did happen. And so when they see guys like Elgin Baylor or John Havlicek, these wings put up really awesome numbers later on, and they see Jim Pollard averaging 15 points a game, they get confused. But in the season that he's averaging 15 points per game, that Lakers team is averaging 85 points per game. It's incredibly slow. In fact, it's pre-shot clock. And
Hmm.
I think that's really important because after the shot clock, there is this huge, massive overreaction. I posted a video about it on TikTok, if you can find that, where within a few years, the pace is 40 possessions higher than it was in the early 50s. And it's just been slowly coming down. In fact, the pace that we're playing at today is closer to um, 50s era basketball. We're just a lot better at scoring the basketball now, but still, um, 85 points per game makes 15 points per game look a lot better.
Absolutely.
And
All right.
I have to mention the reports of Jim Pollard being able to dunk from the free throw line, which is just incredible. He's listed at 6'4", 185, the Kangaroo Kid. Supposed to be just such an incredible athlete. I just love the idea of, like, you see the videos of 50s basketball and it's set shots and it's chest passes. And I just want to see one clip of Jim Pollard jumping over somebody, ripping the backboard off. And somewhere out there has to be a clip of one of his dunks.
There's a YouTube of Bill Russell getting the ball, going coast to coast, and jumping over a guy.
Hmm.
And I showed it to a friend. He's like, yeah, players do that all the time. I'm like, no, no, no. This was in the 50s. I think it's a high school clip of Russell. Like, those guys existed. There are some just phenomenal, phenomenal athletes in the early era, but it's not the norm, which makes them all the more impressive.
Absolutely. So with that, Hagen's off the list because he was already in. Jim Pollard's done. Now Sean Marion enters as our small forward candidate. A Maverick, a really good Phoenix Sun.
The
Played for the
Matrix.
Cavs at the Matrix. Played for the Cavs at one point. That was fun.
Yeah, I think it's time to look at our center. Maybe it's just the Nuggets making the finals that has me swelling with Nuggets pride, but we're looking at the Dikembe Mutombo, a man who led the league in blocks 3 times. We're looking at a 8-time All-Star, which, do you know how hard it is to make the All-Star team as a center in the 90s?
It's tough.
Like those aughts, a couple of those, where he's getting in with Philly, the later couple of ones with Atlanta. Okay, that's a much easier time. Brad Miller's about to make it. Jamal McGlore's about to make it. Like, but 95, he's making it alongside Hakeem and Robinson in the West. 97, it's Ewing, it's Shaq, it's he's beating out Rick Smits, who not not the greatest, but he's beating Alonzo Mourning. Like, there's a lot of good centers in this era. Also, amazing longevity. We're looking at basically 1,200 games played in the regular season, another 100 in the playoffs.
Sorry, I hit almost every single wrong command to try to unmute myself. I was just opening up all types
we're,
of shit.
we're learning how to do something new. We're
We are.
experimenting. I'm probably gonna put this whole video unedited and then edit it and release it as the podcast form.
Sounds great. Sounds great. I keep on forgetting, well, that I'm being recorded. I like check my phone, like wipe my nose and shit. But anyways, you'll fix that.
Oh no, that's listen.
That's staying
I'm
in.
working with new technology here. We're gonna see what happens.
Mutombo enters the league at age 25, and he still plays to age 42. I just think that's incredible. This is such a late start from 1992 to 2002, which is age 25, but all the way to 35. He makes all 8 of his All-Star teams, his 3-time All-NBAs. He has 3 block titles, 2 rebounding titles, 4 Defensive Player of the Year, 6-time All-Defense, averaging 12 points on 52% shooting, which is pretty standard under the basket. Kind of not rim running necessarily, but in the dunker spot center points, but with 12 rebounds and 3.4 blocks. Some people were put on this earth to grab rebounds and block shots. Dikembe Mutombo is one of those people.
Speaking of put on this earth, did you hear the thing about the tree and Dikembe Mutombo?
I have not.
So Dikembe's tribe supposedly plants a tree every time one of their tribe is born. Um, Sounds like a very nice ceremony. I actually, hey, maybe I'll when I have a kid, I'll plant a tree for them. Be like that tree and you, same age. Um, Lightning hit that tree and knocked it down, and they were able to count the rings on that tree. And I know ring counting in trees is kind of a questionable science, but should be one ring per year. Well, they found out that he was actually like somewhat significantly older than what he was. This is kind of a Manute Bol situation if they don't know exactly how old he was. And they said he was 25 when he entered the league, but there's a chance that he could have been even older when he was playing in the NBA.
It's entirely possible. I don't want to what am I trying to say?
You
It's
don't want to
entirely
have
possible.
wild speculation.
I respect Kim Mutombo, and if he says he's how old is he listed as? If he says he is 56 and 332 days, I believe him. But that is a very interesting story. It kind of in line with the Manute Bol.
Yeah.
I think it was a locker room story with the nicks on some part of his body to signify his age, and it was like 57 or something. His teammates like I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on here, but I'll keep the
Yeah.
tall guy in the team.
And to be fair, there was also the time where the NBA played a game in Africa that was like what 5 years ago, and Mutombo came back out and played, and like yeah, it wasn't good, but like the guy still got game. The guy has aged gracefully. You gotta love
And
the
5
finger
years
wag.
ago, I think you might be underestimating how long ago that was.
Was it really that
I'm gonna
long
make you feel
ago?
really old. One sec.
Listen, the Katrina All Star game, I still feel like was like 10 years ago, and I know that's Gilbert Arenas and Tracy McGrady going down. I'm sure that's probably 15 years ago at this point.
I think you're right. Actually, you're right. It's 2018. I do remember that Hakeem hits a dream shake, and they look good. They can bring him back.
Yeah,
I always mention this. They used to have the NBA Legends game in the 80s where like retired guys, and then David Thompson, his knee just disintegrated. They're like, all right, good game, guys. Never doing that again. There's another Lakers player that the same game, some Lakers six man got Norm Nixon or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm too late on that. Anyways, no
yeah,
more Legends games. Okay, Dikembe comes in at 114.
114.
I have a nomination for you,
Are you going to nominate Tommy Heinsohn? Like we mentioned him at the
Nate.
start of this pod, or maybe right after Jerry Lucas. We mentioned Paul
No.
Westfall like a half an hour ago.
Those we'll get to Westfall before Heinsohn, I think. I want to talk about Lenny Wilkins.
Okay,
He's the next point guard nomination. From 1962 to 73, he's averaging 17.7 points, 5 boards, 7.2 assists. 7.2 assists is a lot of assists. He led the league in assists one time, but he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times being top 5 in assists per game. He has 12 seasons just in the top 20. But let me ask you something. In 1971, he averages 20 points, 9 boards, 4.5 rebound. Sorry. In 1971, he averages 20 points, 9 board. I'm going to start that one more time. You ready? Final time. In 1971, he averages 20 points, 9 assists, and 4.5 rebounds. That 71 Supersonics team wins 38 games, which isn't great. But you know who their coach is?
Ooh,
It's Lenny Wilkins. He's coaching the fucking team. He's doing both things. He's an all-star and he's coaching the team.
I
Um,
know he's won like one of the 10 most games as a coach. He's also lost like one of the 10 most games as a coach. Like he coaches forever.
and it's not like an end of career thing either because he leaves Seattle as both a player and a coach, and he goes to Cleveland and he makes another all-star team for the 73 Cavs, averaging 20 points, 8 assists, and 5 boards again. It's not a great Cavs team. It's close to their expansion years. coached by Bill Fitch, but he's able to be an all-star and coach the team at the same time. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he's able to average 20 points and 8 assists at age 35 on a pretty bad team, being an all-star. Like, there's a lot of really impressive stuff about Lenny Wilkens. Do you know that he never made an All-NBA team?
I did know that. He's always just a touch behind the best four guards.
Which, do you know who those 4 guards are the majority of the time? Because it's a pretty stable list. Yeah, you do have like 1 year where Gene Shue jumps in there, and another year where Dave Bing gets in. But it's pretty stable for the vast majority of this time.
It's West and it's Oscar, and there's your first team All NBA every single season.
Yep.
I'm not sure who the other two guys are.
Hal Greer,
Yeah,
7 times, and then Sam Jones gets in there a good number of times.
and those guys have been ranked, so I feel like this is appropriate.
Yep. As they start to tail off, kind of you hit those 70s, then you get Earl and Walt Frazier and Dave Bing jumping in there. Like it's a pretty good class to be behind. I'll take it. I'll take Lenny Wilkens here at 115, and that opens the door to Derrick Rose. We had Luca at the 25 point guard spot. We're bumping him up after this season's play, which we'll get to where he should be ranked in the top 100. Was
Pretty
really
soon.
hoping for more, but
I thought he'd be higher. This Mavs season wasn't great, but he should be in the top 100. I think that's pretty clear. I mean, this
yeah.
season we have one more series left. It is the NBA Finals, and we will get to that afterwards. Are you interested in Derrick Rose? MVP.
I'm interested. I'm curious. I'm thinking. I'm contemplating. It's a real short peak, and it's not a lot else going on.
It's an MVP. Youngest MVP ever.
Yeah, the guy I was thinking about is Yao Ming, and I do think that Rose should be over Yao. Yao doesn't have quite as dramatic of a drop off as Rose, but like I can't sit here and tell you the fact that he played multiple 50 game seasons, is really better than the fact that Rose didn't play at all. Like it is better, but it's not that much better to make up for the loss of an MVP.
So we're comfortable with Derrick Rose.
Yes.
Okay. 116 is Derrick Rose, youngest MVP ever. What could have been? Do you blame
So
Tibbs for the downfall of Derrick Rose? Is it Tibbs' fault for playing him 49 minutes a
no,
game?
no. I
No,
mean,
I
it's a
agree.
style of play thing. It's
Yeah,
a bit of a freak injury. I mean, I don't know how freak it is. I feel like he's had a good number of them, but
he
it's not
jumped and
Tibbs'
landed
fault.
like he had 6,000 ligaments in his knees. Just, who needs him? We're gonna land here and jump there and off of one leg, off of two legs, and just get him replaced. And it's kind of the same thing we're gonna see with John Morant. One of these days, he's gonna hit the ground really hard and not get up the same. And
Yeah,
be like, man, maybe trying to jump over everyone wasn't a great idea.
yeah. I am just looking at this though, and I do think we need to go on a run on power forwards at some point rather soon because we're starting to back up some really good
Yes,
ones.
soon. I have a run of shooting guards first, and then a long run of power forwards after
You have
that.
a
How do you?
run of shooting guards. Okay, make your
I
point.
do.
Is it now?
1 second. Yes, it is now. It's Paul Westphal into Joe Dumars into Pete Maravich. How do you feel about it?
Back to back to back. Um,
Back to back
talk
to back.
talk to me about Paul Westphal first.
Westphal just has a really incredible mid 70s into the early 80s, and it's post merger, so everyone's there. It's not a weaker era by the talent being split up, and he's 22 points per game, 5.5 assists, 2 boards on good efficiency. He is a 5-time All Star, 4-time All NBA, and he wins the 1974 championship, which he's not really contributing to, but I'll count it just for fun. In terms of the All NBAs, he has 3 first team All NBAs in 77, 79, and 80. So this is post merger, a second team All NBA in 1978. And they have that finals run. The 1976 Suns go to the finals, and they push that Celtics team to 6 games. They won just 42 games. It's the in the playoffs. Westfall averages 21 points, 5 assists, and 2.5 rebounds. He's the leading scorer on a team that goes to the finals. It's the 70s Jimmy Butler, Nate. It's the 70s Jimmy Butler, but he's white.
70s Jimmy Butler, but white.
Taken an improbable 42 win team all the way to the finals.
Can we do something here that we don't usually do? And that's re-rank guys from our rankings.
I'm open to it.
Can we move him behind Pete Maravich?
And Dumars all the way back
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
I think all right, sure. Sure.
We kind
My
of rushed.
Westfall heart, my Westfall belief fell apart so quickly there. I hope he still believed my argument.
We rushed Westfall in there because we were in the middle of recording the top 100. And we're like, oh shit, we've run out of shooting guards, because or we didn't. We were like, we might run out of shooting guards. Who are we going to just put in there arbitrarily? So I felt like we rushed that one, and I think
Fair
I'd
point,
rather
we
have
did.
Joe Dumars here, Finals MVP, really elite guard, like
He's
guard
like
defender.
one of the best defensive shooting guards ever. And something to note is in 1989 and 1990, it's not Isaiah Thomas making the All NBA teams as a guard. It's
Hmm.
Joe Dumars.
Yeah, yeah, 6-time All Star, 3-time him All NBA, 5-time defensive, and 2 championships. I think I would rather have Joe Dumars at 117. And then I can also get here with Pete Maravich, Pistol Pete, a man from the wrong era. I don't know that necessarily he'd be better in another era. I think he's actually probably best as that innovator, as that guy that pushes the league forward. He also, I'm just gonna say it, there is some he's a white guy that does the playground style black guy things in the 70s when the the NBA would push back on the ABA and say it's too black. It's, you know, like there's a lot of racial stuff with the ABA versus the NBA. And I think Pete Maravich gets a lot of love for being the white guy that plays the fun, quote unquote, fun brand of basketball. But he's an innovator and he pushes the game forward, even if he didn't win a lot.
He's one of the first players to really like try shit. Just go out there and try shit. Let's see what we can do. And while we're critical of his effectiveness in
Hmm.
his efficiency and his defense, which I think is fair, um, fantastic scorer, just a wizard with the basketball. I respect what he's done.
Yeah. All right. So if we lock him in at 118, do you still love Paul Westphal at 119?
You want to go Yao Ming and then Westfall?
Yeah, I want to go Yao Ming.
Okay. Yao Ming was really good. Just such good touch for a guy that size. His body couldn't handle it because he played. He always had to play for China in the summer leagues and go back overseas. He basically he speed ran a 15-year career in 8 seasons because he was just playing basketball the entire time through.
It is a weaker time for centers, and he does have the Chinese national, well, Chinese nation, the whole nation of China voting for him. So some of his all-star appearances are a little sketchy,
Pretty
but the
sketchy.
man still makes 5 all NBA teams, and there's nothing the nation of China can do to help with that. 2 of them are second teams, 3 of them are third teams. He gets a spare MVP vote or two, who probably would have gotten more had he stayed healthy. He does have limited playoff successes, but I just feel like you go into any one of these seasons and if you're looking at your roster and say you had a Sean Marion because they played relatively the same time, and he's the next up guy for us for small forward. Could you trade Sean Marion for Yao Ming? No, absolutely not. Now, do you want to do that? Maybe, maybe not. Marion has a great longevity to his career, but at their peaks, no one is trading Yao Ming for Sean Marion. Teams would make the inverse trade.
Yao Ming was viewed as almost untouchable asset in terms of talent. His body couldn't stay healthy, but it's like Zion almost, where it's like I'm not moving off this guy, like,
Yeah,
not doing it. If he's on the court, I'm not doing it.
yeah,
So that leaves Paul Westphal at 120. I feel good about that.
I do too. And I feel
Y-
really ready for this run at power forwards.
I am too. Hey, Paul Westphal plays in the greatest game ever played, Game 5, 1976 finals. Just have to mention that. Went to triple overtime. They did lose, but he plays in the greatest game ever by name. Can't argue with that. Best game ever played.
The greatest game ever.
So the power forwards in order, because we ranked them beforehand, they have to be in this order, are Tommy Heinsohn, Chris Bosh, Sean Kemp, and LaMarcus Aldridge. I had those four just dead in a row. How do you feel about that?
Let's see. So our guards here for point guard we have Gus Williams, whom I really love. Gus Williams. Our small forward is Sean Marion. Yep, I can get all of those guys over Sean Marion. I actually can do a couple more power forwards before we get to Sean Marion. Our center is Jack Sikma. And Jack Sikma actually has a really similar case to a lot of the power forwards that we'd be getting down to, of being just a complete team player, a guy that helps you win, being beloved by a franchise. But I do think some of the other guys have a little bit more star potential. Not Heinsohn, but
But
Bosch
they're
and
better.
Kemp.
They're better players. I
Yeah.
see. I did have Sigma 125 right after these four guys. You want to go one by one? We can go back and
Let-
forth. Do you want to start with Heinsohn, or do you want me to start with Heinsohn?
Yeah, let's start with Heinsohn. Let's talk our way through them. For me, Heinsohn as an individual probably should be below Chris Bosch or Sean Kemp. Heinsohn is a very good scoring forward, good scoring power forward. Nicknamed Tommy Gun, Ack, the Hawk, Dr. Hawkenstein, Gunner. He was the voice of the Celtics for the last several years. But the thing with him is that he is an 8-time champion. He plays next to Bill Russell, and the two have just the perfect combo for each other. Heinsohn can move, get up and down the floor. Heinsohn and doesn't really do as much rebounding as a lot of power forwards that day, but he is making up for Russell's lack of interior scoring incredibly well. The 8 rings, I think that matters quite a lot. I like Heinsohn here at 121.
It's 8 rings, but it's also 8 rings in 9 seasons. He retires at age 30, and he makes the finals in the 1 year that they don't win. He is a playoff riser for sure, averaging 20 points per game in the playoffs and 9 boards, which is a bit up from 18.5 points per game and 8.8 boards in the regular season. You don't win 8 rings by not being clutch and coming through in big games, and Heinsohn surely did that year after year. He's a crucial part of the greatest dynasty ever seen. I think this is a good spot. Maybe is he a little bit worse individually than Chris Bosh? Sure, but I'm okay with that. I don't need Chris Bosh Raptors years to. I'm not going to look into that too much over what Heinz accomplished, winning championship after championship.
Fair. Fair. All right. Yeah. So then that brings us to Chris Bosh. You said you're not going to value the Raptors years that much.
I
I
still do.
do. I
I
love
still
the
do.
Raptors years.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
The Raptors kind of became my East Coast team. We got
Yeah, I see it.
my Tracy
You got
McGrady
the McGrady.
in
I
the
guess what I'm
background.
saying is I don't need to see Chris. I don't need to see Tommy Heinsohn take a team to 40-ish wins for me to value his ability and what he did. I believe that he could have done it. Um, for Chris Bosh, though, he's an 11-time All-Star. I know All-Star games or whatever, fans vote on them, but That's got to tell you something. And he even had to walk away at age 31, and he was an all-star that year too. Um, he's able to take the Raptors to the playoffs twice, which is really tough for the Raptors. The Raptors are not a great franchise to start. Um, he's able to give them a little bit of stability. As a third option, Miami, I do think he's doing a bit less than we remember in those 4 seasons making the playoffs for Miami. He's 15 points and 7 boards, but he was able to scale up, which we've talked about before, to 24 points, 11 rebounds in 2010, and then kind of scale down really well to be such an underrated defensive player. He could space the floor, but he had these long arms and he defended the pick and roll so well, just anchoring this Miami defense in the inside. I really view him and Roy Hibbert as the pivot in what we valued in defense over the years, where Hibbert is just this mountain of a man. He defends the rim. And then over the course, like 2014, 15, 16, it's like, hey, maybe the guy that can switch out, guard the perimeter a bit, really close out well, defend the rim while moving in space is a better defensive player than the tall dude who stands there. That was a real change.
Yeah. I mean, he innovates, the whole game kind of changes. He's also one of the guys that you get to see go from being a star to being a role player and then going back to be a star. Like, I think that's important to see that he sacrificed. It wasn't like the league got better or that he got worse. It was truly a sacrifice. When I see his numbers aren't quite as impressive as some other guys, I'm not really as concerned because he bounced back. He's choosing to limit himself. I also, we talk about awards a lot. He's got 11 All-Star appearances, but only one All-NBA. And I think he kind of gets a little bit, I don't want to say screwed because I think it's right, but he has some bad timing as far as just being what position he is. Because he later becomes a center. But in his early years, he is a forward. And that means for all NBA, he has to be better than LeBron James, Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Garnett, Carmelo Anthony, and some years Amari Stoudemire. Like,
How about Kevin Durant
there's
even later on?
yeah, he's got a tough ballot to get in. Whereas the centers in some of those years, you've got like 21-year-old Dwight Howard's making it. Uh, you got
Andrew Bynum,
Andrew
Andre
Bogut.
Drummond. Andrew, yeah,
Yeah.
if he had transitioned to center earlier, we'd see like, whoa, 6-time All NBA. Chris Bosh, and man, just having this conversation, I can't wait for the All NBA ballots next year. The position list, top 15 as it stands. How awesome is that? I like the context that these awards give us, like who is the better player, but I guess this kind of does the same thing. It just orders it. We never have to be like, oh, why didn't he make any All NBA teams? Because the position he played.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I want to have happen is I want MVP to go back to being player voted. I want there to be some differences because once you go back to once this is now 1 through 15, we're basically going to have the same ballot twice. It's going to be MVP and All NBA. It's going to be the same group of guys. But if you make you
I
make
like it.
MVP players, then we get to see where we have some different values. And I really like the fact that in the 60s, the players would vote one guy and the media would vote someone else and be this debate. I mean, can you imagine if the media picked Jokic for MVP and the players uh picked Embiid? Like that, it'd be just so much more fun.
Chaos. I like it. Nate, it's your turn to give us. I did Chris Bosh. It's your turn for Sean Kemp, and then I'll do
Whoa, whoa,
Marcus
whoa.
Aldridge.
You did Chris Bosh. Oh,
I
man, I
started
messed
it.
up. We're on video. I forgot the fact that I brought props to this.
About props, let me
Chris
see.
Bosh.
Very nice. I like it. It's such a great logo. The color scheme. We need more purple teams. The Kings are a purple team. They don't really own up. They don't really lean into it as much as I think they should.
I've been thinking about that too because the Lakers are a purple team,
Yeah, but
and
they're
I
like yellow now. What happened
no,
to the
they have
purple,
the
man?
dumb white jersey.
Yeah, it's a bad jersey. And the Kings, they have a nice blue pink Not either of one of those colors. They have a nice purple jersey. Although I've seen some leaks of the jersey they're gonna announce. I think we're doing almost a complete rebrand. I think we were waiting to make the playoffs before we almost completely redid this. Um, and I'll send you some pictures after this, but it looks really nice. I guess I am on video. Let me find a picture.
All right. Well, then it's hard. I'm between a rock and a hard place here because I'm nominating a Seattle Supersonic. The question is just which Supersonic here.
Uh,
And I kind of want to go with Gus Williams. But really, we have 3 Sonics on the board. Did you realize
really?
that? Well, we got
I
Jack Sigma, we have Gus Williams, and we have
can't find it. I'm surprised
Sean
you'd go
Kemp.
Gus Williams.
So Gus is really interesting in that he is he's arguably just as good as Dennis Johnson. When they win that title, it's the two of them, and I think that should have been it's a toss up. Who should win in this? He's a guy that can get you 20 points per game and close to 8 assists in kind of the later years. But one thing I find really interesting with him is, Seattle goes from winning the title to making the Western Conference Finals to a really disappointing year. I'm trying to pull up the exact numbers. Yeah, all right. So 78, losing the finals. 79, wins the finals. 80, conference finals loss. 81, they win 34 games with relatively the exact same roster. And the big difference is that Gus Williams sits out for a contract dispute. Huge drop off from a championship team. I think I'm wrong. I'm thinking about it, and the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking it's Jack Sigma. He just has a little bit longer or
You're crushing my
longevity.
power forwards run here.
Well, it was a great run. It was a great,
Okay,
great
it's a great
run.
run of 2. All right. I like we can do Sigma. Looking at
Was it
my
only
own
2?
list, yeah, it was just Heinsohn and Bosch.
Seattle.
I had Gus Williams a bit lower at 29, but I do get it, and I'm willing to defend him. Man, yeah, I mean, I had Jack Sigma 25th, but after that, I feel like it has to be Kemp and Lamarcus.
Yeah, I'm fine. And
Okay.
with that.
So, are you going to give this the Kemp argument, and I'll do Lamarcus?
No, I want to do LaMarcus.
Fuck. 1 second. Here to talk about Rain Man, Sean Kemp, someone whose name I will almost certainly misspell if I make a video about him because I always f up the Sean's on on how you spell it. It's Sean Marion's fault because it's a U. He has a U in his name, and it's just brutal. But Sean Kemp is a 6-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, played from 1990 to 2003. But from 1993 to 98, he makes all 6 All-Star teams, 3 All-NBA teams, like I had said, 18 and a half points, 10 rebounds, and 2 assists. And these are really good Seattle teams. He makes the playoffs every year but his rookie season with Seattle. And he's barely even playing his rookie year. He's coming off the bench every single game. In the finals of 1996, going up against the 96 Bulls, the greatest team ever, if not the greatest, the second greatest, he's averaging 23 points and 10 boards on 55% shooting. He's effective as ever, and that's against Dennis Rodman. That's against a great Bulls defense. That's hard to break into. Sean Marion finds success. That's my argument. Great scorer, great rebounder on good teams.
It's a good argument. It's a great argument. I realized that we didn't really give Jack Sigma his love. We We didn't really talk about him.
I did that because in our centers video we talked about Jack Sikwa for like 35 minutes.
We did. We did. So I'm gonna get you some of the highlights. He's basically Splash Mountain of the 80s. His GM said that he wouldn't trade Jack Sikma for Marilyn Monroe in his bedroom. He wins a title as a late stage player. He wins a title as an all-star. Or sorry, he doesn't win a title as a late stage player, but he's huge on the 80s. He's Milwaukee Bucks. He's gets that title with Seattle. He is a 7-time all-star. There's just a lot to love about Jack Sikma. The late development of the 3-point shot. You can hear us talk about him for like 30 minutes on the Centers pod, but
he's solid,
he's a winner.
Winning basketball, good scorer, good rebounder, good passer, good defensive player. Is he Shaq? No, but he's pretty good, and that's enough for, was it 120? For, oh man, we're past that. 123.
Yes, 123. And then my LaMarcus Aldridge case is LaMarcus Aldridge was looked at as the guy that was going to replace Tim Duncan. I know it didn't happen, but I think we need to remember the fact that he was the Duncan successor. He was the heir apparent, and he got that way by being a 20-10 player for 5 straight seasons with Portland. He opened up a playoff series with back-to-back 40-point games, a feat that I've never seen, until Devin Booker, which did Booker have back-to-back 40-point games to start a series, or was you know what I'm talking about? Like, we marveled at Devin Booker this year. We saw LaMarcus Aldridge do that in prior years. There was maybe 80% of LeBron's decision, or like Durant's Hampton 5 recruiting. There was like 80% of that attention given to LaMarcus Aldridge,
A huge
which meant
deal where he was going.
He commanded it. Absolutely.
And he deserved that. He was 20 points and 9 boards since 2012. All of a sudden, he can go somewhere else. It was a huge deal.
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about why Damian Lillard's career has been unsuccessful, lacking rings. It's because LaMarcus Aldridge left. If those guys had gotten to play together, LaMarcus,
I agree.
They're competing.
Go ahead.
He's got 5 years where he's one of the top 10 scorers in the league, and he's a really good defensive player alongside of that in his peak.
Is that true?
Yes, that is true.
Verify that? Okay.
He's picking up. He's picking up all defensive votes. His length. He was actually marginally athletic, like, not talking Brooklyn, LaMarcus Aldridge, but he defended the paint well.
Pretty well. I'm not going to give him his flowers quite yet. Let's cool it on LaMarcus Aldridge is a good defensive player. He's pretty good. He was average. Yeah, and played for over 1,000 games. I think I like it.
So that gives us our 125 range. I'm going to reread it from 101. We got Bob Lanier, James Worthy, Connie Hawkins, Dave Bing, Roger Brown, Jerry Lucas, Ben Wallace, Bill Sharman, Dennis Johnson, Adrian Dantley, Penny Hardaway, Chris Mullins, Jim Pollard, Dikembe Mutombo, Lenny Wilkins, Derek Rose, Joe Dumars, Pete Maravich, Yao Ming, Paul Westphal, Tommy Heinsohn, Chris Bosch, Sean Kemp, and LaMarcus Aldridge.
I love the pluralization of Chris Mullin. It's 2 of them. Who knows how many Chris Mullins there are?
When he's playing like he does, you gotta it looks like there's
5 of them out there. He's unstoppable.
Oh my gosh. All right. Good list. You're seeing the tag there, but for our audio only listeners, Aaron, where can the people find you?
Possible Chairs on TikTok.
You can also find me, Hoops Temple, on TikTok. Also check out our friends at Hoops Social. They've got a cool website. They got some pretty cool TikToks. And thank you guys for putting this live stream together. Now, if I can figure out how to get us out of here.
We're stuck. We're stuck in these boxes forever.
I do think I want to kill this one just so we have like a separate recording and then create a new one. So I'll probably kick you out.
All right. See ya.